Quarter Rest is available on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can visit our Patreon at patreon.com/quarterrestpodcast. Check us out on Instagram. The handle is quarterrestpod. Visit our website, quarterrestpodcast.com, and you can email me at joe@quarterrestpodcast.com. Keep it classy, folks. We don't want any incidents. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another exciting episode of Quarter Rest with your host, Joe Diego. It's me. It's kind of lame to announce yourself like that, but I did it anyway, and I would do it again. And I'll tell you why. Because I have a great show for you this week. Introducing our guest, Sam Crooks. He's an old friend of mine. He's a bass player. He sings. He dances. He probably does a number of other things. And he's going to do them all for us this week on our show. Give it up for Sam Crooks! Sam Crooks. Sam Crooks, so happy to see you. How's it going?
Yeah, good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, the weather's pretty good here today. How's the weather in dreary old England?
It's actually been a pretty good summer. Certainly a good spring. In terms of what I've seen over the last kind of 5 years of on and off rain. We had two months of really good sunshine, and then June and July was a little bit rainy, but now it seems we're back to some good stuff.
So Sam, what are you doing over the pond, man? What brought you out to the UK?
I mean, that question would have been a lot more straightforward, I think, more than 5 months ago. It seemed a lot more clear, before all this COVID stuff. But I've been here about 5 years now, coming up on 5 years next year anyway. And I came over here to just kind of start fresh with the music thing. And, followed my partner over here and just to, see how it goes, see what the scene is like and just kind of get involved in that. So.
And you're in London, that's right?
I am, yeah. Northwest London, yeah, in Belsize Park. So I mean, I certainly am kind of getting out there. I've got this band Gatekeepers that we've been playing for about maybe 4 years now, with a guy who's from Cambridge but has been living in London for like 10, 12 years now. Nick Anderson, lovely guy. So I mean, yeah, I don't know. I haven't really done much over the last 5 months, so it's hard to remember what the old world is like,
I know the feeling. I think everybody knows that feeling. So let's talk about COVID. Let's just get that conversation.
Get it out of the way, yeah.
Because I think people are getting sick of talking and thinking about it, even though it's still here and it's still going to be with us for a while.
Yeah, I was mentioning just yesterday how I was sick of talking about it every day. At least one point in the day, I have a conversation with at least somebody about cases and what's a lockdown going to be like if we have to do it again and, all this other stuff. And it's just like, it's every day at this point. So
it's exhausting. So yeah, well, I'm sorry. Today won't be the day where you don't talk about it. So
that's fine.
Don't blame me, man. I don't know who to blame. Blame the bats.
Yeah, I think that's somebody we can all agree we can blame. They've like proved that it comes from a bat, at least. There's a lot of other really weird kind of inappropriate blame being passed by all sides about something or other.
Well, everybody wants to blame somebody else.
Yeah.
In terms of the human blame, there's a lot of diffusion of blame. Nobody wants to take responsibility. Mm. But how has the pandemic been treating you, both as a musician and as a person?
Yeah, so over here, it's been really kind of interesting following the timelines of kind of the different countries and how they've been affected and everything. I mean, everybody's kind of watching the same story develop, being told by various media outlets and everything, but
right.
So London locked down, I think the 25th of March or something. And by then, it was very clear to me anyway, that this was going to be a big problem. And so the company that I work at, which is my day job, locked down. They sent everybody home like a week and a half before, which I thought showed, a certain level of professionalism and care for their employees and everything.
Well, it showed a certain degree of foresight as well. I mean,
well, yeah.
Clearly they saw which way the wind was blowing, and that's good. I mean, that's a really good thing for them to do.
Yeah, it was great. And I mean, they've treated me and, the guys on my team and the other employees at that place like so well. So it's been I've been super fortunate to be employed there before COVID happened, because they took care of us like straight away. So I've been on furlough from that job since the beginning of April. And if furlough is kind of a foreign sounding word, I don't know what the word they're using in Canada, but furlough is the word they've assigned to this specific situation,
I see the word furlough a lot. Could you maybe talk about what furlough means in like a UK context?
So as far as I know, they just took it as the word to mean basic unemployment pay by the government to the companies that are paying your salary. So they'll pay 80% of people's wages, and they'll pay it directly to the company, so you don't really have to worry about getting it from the government or anything like that. Your paycheck just kind of comes as normal, either reduced by 20% or, in the case of my company, topped up to 100%, which has also been like an amazing thing
great.
that they've done. Yeah. I mean, they've just been really caring in the way of trying to alleviate people's kind of anxiety about the whole thing. So it's been really nice.
That's a really good thing, because it's been a very stressful time for a lot of people. So I'm not the expert on this because it hasn't touched me, but I do, from my understanding, Canada has implemented something similar.
Okay.
Now in the U.S., it's a different ball game. I mean, most people who've been laid off are just laid off and on unemployment. And, I'm from the U.S. originally, but not living there now. So everything I know is what I sort of hear from friends, what I see in the media and so on. But it seems like, a lot of people have had really big difficulty getting unemployment money, spending countless hours on the phone with unemployment offices, just trying to get like a check.
Right. Yeah, like there's some $1,200 check or something.
Well, so there was the $1,200 stimulus check, which went out to every adult American, and then there's like the increased unemployment benefits. But that's not unemployment money that goes to the company to keep people attached to their job. That's just money that goes to the individual. See, and this is one of the things that's been criticized, is that the U.S. hasn't done what other countries like the UK have done in sort of keeping people connected to their employment. People are just kind of being tossed onto the street without a job, being told, well, here's a little bit of unemployment money. You're going to have to wait like a couple months before you see any of it. So it's a big problem. And I tell you, man, I'm not so much scared for like my immediate family and many of my friends. Like the people in my circle seem to be pretty fortunate, but it's a scary situation for a lot of people. It's a really, really tough situation.
I can't imagine. I mean, I just feel like, and don't get me wrong, like the UK, in my opinion, has kind of, not handled
shit the bed a little bit.
Not handled this the greatest way possible, but I feel in safer hands than I would if I was there in the US. I think it's just, although all the representation of what's actually happening there is also being sensationalized my way, I can imagine, through the UK media and Facebook and whatever. But it does look bad.
So I'm glad to hear that you've been faring pretty well. Now, how has this affected you as a musician? I have a feeling I know what the answer is going to be.
Yeah. So I haven't been able to have band practice with my bandmate Nick since the 13th of March. And that's just kind of by virtue of we live far enough apart from each other that we'd have to take the transport. And we're both kind of in situations in which we're shielding people. And so, yeah, it's just like, it's starting to get to a point now where I think we'll be able to, I'll be able to have him over or we can go meet in the park and sort at least some sort of playtime together. But yeah, I mean, just not. So it's been very much like a personal kind of practice session for about the last 4 months, which has been good in its own way. But yeah, I'm missing playing with him for sure, and for people,
of course,
and gigs in general.
Yeah, I saw something on Facebook the other day. It was like just a stupid meme with a tombstone, and it said "Rest in peace, gigs."
Yeah, it's so
gigs,
sad,
man.
Yeah.
They're all done.
Yeah, and it's just crazy because like the last gig that we played was like such a good one in, I think it was like February 21st or something, and it was at this place called the Pheasantry, which is just a really fancy Victorian pizza jazz bar type thing in like Chelsea, in London, so like the posh part, and so this bit, I mean, it's ridiculous. It looks like a Greek, building of some kind, like the Parthenon. When you walk in, so there's big columns and everything. It's all done up.
It's got that neoclassical architectural style.
Yeah, exactly. And then you walk in and it's just like a pizza bar, and then you go downstairs and it's like a really beautiful kind of jazz bar in the style of
that's cool.
The Village Vanguard, or a place like that, kind of small and whatever. And we opened up for Jack Bruce's son, Malcolm Bruce.
Wow.
Who's doing kind of like I think he just kind of threw that gig together to, have some fun with some guys that he hadn't played with in a while. Like he wasn't doing it like promoting anything. It was just kind of a gig. He might live upstairs for all I know, But yeah, I mean, that was wicked. It was like packed house, and it's funny to think that was the last gig that I did, and I have no idea what the next one's going to be like, That's not like online,
Yeah. So have you been doing online gigs?
I did one for this lady who we met playing at what was it? The Marylebone Street Festival, which is just kind of this one-off thing that happens in Marylebone, which is kind of like downtown London. And she organized like this Facebook group for a pub that's like near her home in Wiltshire, and there was like, I don't know, like 1,000 people on this group, and so they'd just been doing. She's like, okay, well, if we're not going to go to the pub to have these shows, we'll just everybody at the pub sign up for this Facebook group, and we'll do it like that. So I did one of those. I mean, it was fun and everything, but I hadn't done a solo show in like a really long time. And so it was just a bit weird playing guitar again after, 4 years straight of playing pretty much only double bass. So yeah, I would definitely get back on it. Yeah.
So in Gatekeepers, you're playing upright bass. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I guess things still haven't opened up enough in the UK that there can be like outdoor gigs. Because I know from some of the people, some friends of mine and people I've talked to in Vermont, outside gigs are starting to happen again. And like in Nova Scotia, even some like bar gigs are starting to happen again. They're not as big, right? These are small gigs for sure. It's not going to be like the one you were describing earlier, but at least there's like some live music taking place. It looks like in London, you're not there yet.
Yeah. So the pubs are back open. But I would say, I mean, if the pub is being responsible.
Are people going?
Yeah, people are going. Yeah.
Okay.
And like I've been like a couple of times. It's nice. Okay. Like at the pub that's closest to our flat. They've got a big back garden, and it's like nicely spaced apart, so you don't really have to worry about that stuff. But I do know there's been some pubs like downtown that have just gotten out of control, and there's all kinds of hugging and touching going on, and there's stuff you can't do right now, so. got the cool water when the fever runs high. To keep out the foreigners, they made it strong. And I got a wall around me that you can't even see. Took a little time to get next to me. Something goes wrong, I'm the first to admit it. First to admit it, last one to know. Something goes right, oh, it's likely to lose me. It's apt to confuse me, 'cause it's such an unusual sight. I swear I can't get used to something so right. Something so right. Some people never say those words, I love you. It's not their style to be so bold. Some people never say those words, I love you, like a child longing to be told. Something goes wrong, I'm the first to admit it. First to admit it, last one to know. Something goes right, oh, it's likely to lose me. It's apt to confuse me, 'cause it's such an unusual sight. I swear I can't get used to something so right. Something so right.
So let's talk about Gatekeepers.
All right.
How did you meet Nick?
So I moved here in 2016, and I actually went to work on a cruise ship as like a kind of solo guitar singer type act. And on there I met a whole bunch of British people, whereas like before I was here, and I was going to like open mics and just kind of getting to know the city a little bit. But on a cruise ship, it's kind of like a micro social experiment where you just jam people together and they hang out every night, no matter what. And usually it's until 4:30 in the morning with a bunch of drinks. And so yeah, I met these great guys from kind of around the UK. And one of my buddies was coming into town like a month after the contract ended, and I was like, okay,
this was a Canadian buddy.
This is a British guy.
So someone you'd met through the cruise experience.
Yeah.
Cool.
So he was a part of the rock band that kind of plays like from 9 until 1 in the morning type thing. Party band
on the cruise line.
On the cruise line, yeah. And yeah, so he'd come in town and we had kind of hit it off. There was a bass on board that was just kind of like in a hole behind the stage. And I was like, yo, does that thing work? And I had to actually hit the bridge and move it over like a full kind of like inch before it actually made a sound that was cool. But we spent like a lot of nights, just jamming kind of behind the stage.
Nice.
So we thought we would go to an open mic at the Dublin Castle, which is about a 20-minute walk from my place and is famous for being like Amy Winehouse's bar of choice. And so she was kind of there's just loads and loads of pictures of her just kind of all over the place there. So I think she was there quite often. And they did a wicked open mic with these guys that would just essentially be like a jam band if you wanted them to be, and you could kind of go up and do whatever. But Nick,
kind of like a house band.
yeah, like a house band, but like a lot weirder than just like your regular house band that would just kind of play kind of whatever song you get. Like they'll play your song for you, kind of thing.
Oh wow!
So you'd have to give them like a little rundown of it, but they're these young lads and they're really quite good. And Nick, my guitar player, worked at the bar there, and he just got up to like kind of open the night before these dudes showed up, and I was like, it's like, keeping to myself in the back, not really. I'm kind of a shy guy, so not just kind of jazzing people up everywhere. And then I saw him play, and I was like, yo, you got to play with me like tonight. And then he just kind of like riffed on a couple of my tunes, and then I wrote them after, and was just like, oh yeah, we got to play. And then been playing ever since.
And I guess he liked your bass playing.
Yeah, well, I was all on guitar. I didn't even have my bass with me yet. I had to like go back to get my bass on account of it being gigantic.
Yeah, upright bass is a pretty big instrument.
Yeah. I'm fortunate enough now. Last year I got, I saw that I just finished listening to Chris Blades's podcast that you did with them, the most recent one that you dropped. Yeah, that was the last one I
released.
Yeah, I really loved that. Obviously love that guy, love his band. It was really interesting to kind of hear what he's been up to for the last little while. And the reason I mentioned those guys is because me and the bass player have the same Chadwick folding bass, and it was actually his bass player that I was like, yo, what do you think about these? I don't know the guy at all, but I reached out to him. I was like, hey man, friend of Chris's, what do you think about this thing? He was like, it's the dopest thing. And so now I got a bass that folds in half, which is amazing.
And it's not an electric bass. It's not like it's an acoustic upright bass that folds in half.
Yeah. So there's a little compartment in the back that you can kind of slide off, and then you loosen the strings, take the bridge out, and then just kind of fold the neck back. And it's got this mechanism that will just kind of allow it to, glide in there. It's super cool.
And then you just have to like retighten the strings, retune them.
Yeah. So that takes about 50 minutes, but yeah, all good. It's insane.
Is it easier to carry? I guess just because it's not as tall.
So depending on what you're doing, yes. So I actually, if I have to take it on the tube or the underground, depending on where I'm going. Subway, on the subway.
Or metro.
On the tube. Well, I called it the tube. They would say it's the tube, mate, but yeah. Like I prefer to take just in the bag with my little rolly wheels that I normally had, because just being on the train with it, I can maneuver it better. But like if you're going in a car or if you're going in a plane, the Chadwick folding bass is the way to go for sure. I feel like I'm selling it, but it's actually awesome. So
this episode of Quarter Rest is sponsored by Chadwick Folding Bass.
Yeah, fucking right.
Take this bass to your place. Take this bass to a space.
Yeah.
That's actually really cool, and I'm surprised I've never heard of that. That sounds awesome. And the sound is good. You're not sacrificing tone.
Like, not at all. It's the best plywood. Like, you can get a better bass, obviously, if you spend loads and loads of money. But in terms of plywood basses and the fact that when you plug it in, I think all the stuff that's inside to brace it, to kind of allow it to be able to maneuver the way that it does, actually helps it out when it's plugged in. It sounds better than most plywood basses with just the pickup on it, because there's no like extra kind of frequencies or reverberations going on. It's all solid in there. But even as an acoustic instrument, it's like maybe a little bit quieter than a normal bass, but I don't notice it at all.
All right, let's go back in time a little bit. How did you first get into music in a big way?
Oh, good question. I reckon my brother probably has a lot to do with it. He, he's 5 years older than me. And so pretty much anything he was doing when I was a kid was like the coolest thing ever. And so
I have 2 kids. I know how it is.
Yeah, they're constantly trying to, copy each other and do whatever the other guy's doing.
Yep.
And I mean, he introduced me to like Metallica and Tool and Soundgarden and all these bands that just kind of like lit my brain on fire with how awesome they were. And so I would say he's huge. My dad, as you've been a part of we both went to the same university and we're sang in the same choir and everything. So he's, certainly a guy who's influenced me a lot. I used to wake up to the Beatles, pretty much every day. And I used to think that those were his tunes and that the Beatles had stolen them from him. I was outraged when I learned that at like 4 years old,
Oh.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely family, I guess, is the easiest answer to that. And then I picked up bass.
That's usually the case.
Yeah. And I picked up bass when I was 12 because I didn't want to play guitar like my brother was playing. And so I was like, I'll go with the heavier 4-string thing. Seems like there's less to deal with there. It must be easier. And
that's what everyone always thinks.
Yeah.
Do you think that's true? Do you think bass is easier?
I think on like a very superficial level that it is. But if you actually think about what the bass is doing and listen to what the great players do, then you've got to be a master at it. It's a whole different way of thinking, I think, than guitar or piano or drums.
For the sake of listeners who aren't bass players or who have never played in a band or even who have never played in a really good band with a really good bass player, like what is the role of a bass in a band? Like a typical rock band, jazz band, pop band?
I mean, I've always thought, maybe this is because I'm biased, but I think I've always thought of it as being the instrument that like brings it to life, brings everything.
Yeah, you would think that, wouldn't you?
I mean, I would, for sure. And I know I can feel the guitar players just yelling at whatever their headphones or they're listening on this eventually. But yeah, like for me, it brings the color. It holds down everything. It's the link between, all the instruments. It's the direct, it's a percussive instrument if you're playing double bass, just as much as a melodic instrument if you're Victor Wooten, So, and I just love the control that good bass players have as well. They can just change everything by playing a different, a note down a step or something, and it completely changed the whole color of the game, So really everybody's at our mercy, I think, because we're down in the cellar.
Yeah, I think the bass, a lot of people seem to agree that the bass actually is what defines the rhythm in the band, more so even than the drums, because the drums can kind of play ahead, can kind of play behind. The drums can kind of like dance around the rhythm a little bit. The bass is really like driving the pulse of the music.
Yeah.
Arguably more so than the drums. It might depend on the style a little bit. It might depend on the band.
Of course.
It might depend on the player. But to me, a good bass player is defining the rhythm, defining the pulse. And a bad bass player is just like going up and down the neck too fast, and
right,
or
you
playing
playing
stupid shit. Yeah, me playing bass. I'm playing a guitar line that happens to be on a bass.
Yeah,
and this is why I don't play bass.
Fair. I read Charles Mingus's autobiography. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to read that, but it's like
I haven't.
It's pretty. It's so him. Like, if you know anything about this guy, it's like, it's totally fucking him. Sorry for swearing.
You can swear on this show.
Oh, brilliant. But yeah, he's totally obsessed with himself, and it's like 600 pages or something. and like only the last 50 are like really cool insights into like his musical mind, if I can put it that way, because I mean I'm a huge fan of his music.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like the first, like, it's like an autobiography, and so he kind of refers to himself in the third person when he's like, he tries to like bring characters into it, and so like, you know, little baby Charlie was doing this and little baby Charlie was doing that or whatever. But there's a lot of complaining, and there's a lot of anger, you know, as you can probably imagine.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, yeah, there's a wicked bit in those last like 50 pages that are totally worth it. I mean, like I would read it again just to get that experience. And he talks about how he thinks of the beats as like a circle. And so he'd be like, I can play, you know, around it, to the side of it, behind it, or like, you know, one different thing on each beat, and it'll still be in perfect time. So I always thought, I kind of took that. I was like, try to understand it like he understood what he was saying there, you know, because it's I think it's quite a deep kind of thing to think about, you know, but he's like so rubbery and bouncy and stuff. I know he knows what he's talking about when he says that, you know.
Yeah, he has a certain degree of credibility. Do you like Mingus a lot as a bass player?
Oh man, unreal. I mean, there's some recordings that I find like he's almost too like angry or something for it to be getting through. Like he's playing so hard, it's wicked, and he's playing at like 300 BPM or whatever, as fast as possible. And but it's also like super kind of atonal, especially that stuff in the later 60s and 70s that I don't always love it. I love him more as like a orchestra type dude, or like a sextet kind of thing. He's in terms of that, I think he's my favorite. There's a concert of him in France in like 1961 that just rips like front to back for like 3 hours. It's unreal.
Because Mingus is arguably more. This is Charles Mingus, jazz bass player, for those foolish people listening who don't know who we're talking about. He's arguably more famous as a composer. Like he wrote so many tunes that have become jazz standards, and some of them are great, really cool songs. That I sometimes forget like what instrument he actually played.
Right.
Which is bad. I shouldn't. And he was definitely a good bass player as well, no doubt about it.
Yeah, he just played in a way that I don't think anybody plays like anymore. Like he's so of the old style with the gut strings and the like the action, you know, 4 inches off his bass, but he's just got big bear paws, so it doesn't matter, you know.
Yeah.
Like him, Ray Brown, Paul Chambers, all these guys just had big mitts, you know.
Yeah,
and they
played. You kind of had to.
Yeah, because they didn't play with microphones, so they just like had to jam it through. They're like, okay, what's the loudest string? You know, how loud can I make this thing go if I hit it with all my might?
Are you a big jazz guy?
Yes. So I got into jazz in university through hanging with my buddies who are also kind of getting into it by virtue of our teachers at Bishop's. I wasn't really into it before. I mean, I liked more, I would say, jazz fusion. So I was enjoying like Mahavishnu Orchestra and Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, and you know, the weirder kind of stuff like that.
The aforementioned Victor Wooten.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
you can't be a bass player and not like Victor Wooten. It's the law.
I find it would be criminal if there was a bass player out there that, you know, really loved bass and didn't like Victor Wooten. Because like I mean, what he does in the Flecktones is like the epitome of being a great bass player, and also being Victor Wooten.
Yeah, I've seen him live twice, and both times it was with his Wooten band.
With like the Stanley Clarke and those guys, or just like, or the actual Wooten family.
The Wooten family.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So both times it was with them, and holy shit, that guy's a virtuoso, and so is the band. I mean, it was technically some of the most amazing music I've ever seen performed live, and all improvised and very tasteful too.
Yeah.
Well, for the most part.
Yeah.
Even the tasteless stuff is still kind of tasteful though, because those guys actually know their harmony and know how to like play
Right.
melodically.
Yeah.
Like, so it's never just mindless shredding, even when it's shredding.
Can you change my mind for all the strange and unkind rearrangements of my time? 'Cause the burden of proof is not mine. No, the burden of proof is not mine. Well, else I feel so inclined, and my arguments are cleverly designed from my unwavering truth. And I say, who will not bore me? Who shares my youth? Who can I get to adore me and my unwavering truth? And so to pass the time, I grow my hate in silence for those who find don't meet my eye. Grown accustomed to the omnipresent violence and have confidently chosen my side. And we say, hey, Southern people, but we don't know the meaning of the phrase. The voice is open, at least in another language we'll be caught within the gaze. To be singing, who will not ignore me? Who shares my youth? Who can I get to adore me and my unwavering truth? Sea of changes rattle across my mind. Learn to let go in time. A sea of changes battle with regret. Learning to let go but not forget. Learning to let go but not forget. Learning to let go but not forget. Not forget. Not forget. So can you change my mind for all the strange and unkind dangers of my time? Got me saying, who will be there for me? Who shares my youth? Who will be there for me and my unwavering truth?
Have you heard the album Money Jungle?
Yes. Oh, man. Love it.
Love it. So Money Jungle, this is Duke Ellington on piano. And if you don't know who Duke Ellington is, I want you to turn this podcast off right now and drown yourself in Duke Ellington's music.
I'm going to open a beer for Duke Ellington.
Probably the greatest jazz composer and one of the great jazz musicians, really. Old guy, right? His career started in the 20s. He came out of Kansas City, I'm pretty sure.
I think so, yeah.
Or St. Louis. Anyway, definitely from Missouri. And then was like a mentor to a million different jazz musicians. But that album, Money Jungle, it's with him. It's with Duke on piano, Mingus on bass, and then Max Roach, who was like just one of the great jazz drummers of the time.
Yeah.
And it's just these guys playing as a trio. This was recorded in 1962. And I swear to God, it's like the first metal album. It's
crazy
so
how heavy it is. Yeah. I mean, Caravan is the one I love on that one. And it's just Duke like really having fun with those guys.
Yeah. Because he was from a totally different generation than them. And, you know, he plays piano in more of like a 20s style, right? Like he's a little bit more, you know, because with like later jazz in the 50s and 60s, the piano is just kind of like playing like 2 or 3 note chords and then playing melody over top. Whereas Duke is like playing with his whole hands, right? The more old school jazz piano style. And then Mingus is just doing whatever on that album, and Max Roach is somehow holding it all together, and the whole thing sounds like it's about to go off the rails pretty much the whole time.
Yeah.
So the whole album it's fantastic.
So
anyway.
I have actually a funny story about that record, and it's one of my favorite kind of jazz stories that I've learned. You know what? I might have actually learned it in the Mingus biography that I was talking about before. But basically, the story goes, now it doesn't sound like quite of an Ellington thing to do to me, to the guy who I kind of imagine his personality being like, you know. But apparently he invited those two dudes to record something like, and as they did back in those days, they just put like a session down for one day and knew they were going to record something wicked, which is just blows my mind. And he invited those guys in under the pretense that they would be contributing songs as well. And then on the day, told them that actually, no, they're going to do like 7 of Ellington's tunes or tunes that he likes to do or something. And
Sure.
apparently Mingus was just like totally really, really angry about that. And tried to leave for the day, but then he talked him back into it. But my theory is that he did that to piss him off so he would play well, or play in the style, I should say, that Ellington wanted him to, which is like really angry, which is why that album sounds so metal, you know. And then Max was under the same kind of impression, I guess.
It really does. It's super, especially the bass is super angry sounding.
There's one where he's doing like this extended technique of just pulling the string around the fretboard and playing it. It's like,
It goes on like that for a long time.
To a point, like I've listened to that track before and just like ended up in a belly laugh just because he's just on it. He's just doing it. He's like, this is my idea for this song and you're going to get it.
If it weren't for copyright and licensing bullshit, I would play it right now. I would drop it right in. All right, let's get back to you for a little bit. So, you started playing bass when you were 12. When did you start singing?
The first time I actually, you know, I was probably singing before that. I definitely sang in some like, you know, young kid choirs when I was growing up, and was always kind of singing to myself and, you know, with my parents and stuff, but I never really thought about it seriously as something that I'd like to do until I was at, and this is weird. It was like, it's called May Weekend or something at this like Christian camp in Quebec. And, basically it was just like getting ready for their camp to be set, like a summer camp type deal. Getting ready, you know, getting people in for a weekend to come stay in the cabins and help clean up and do all this other stuff. But they wanted me and my, 15-year-old friends to do the music. And so we just we learned like a bunch of their kind of like Christian rock tunes and just played like the same 10 songs every night for like these 3 days or whatever. But at the end, they had a talent show, and I was getting into like Tenacious D at that time, and so
oh no,
so yeah, and so we did tribute, and like people loved it. I don't know if it went over well with like the song being about the devil and smiting him and such. Although I guess that's a good Christian value. I don't know.
Probably the least offensive song from that Tenacious D album.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's true. There's only like a couple swear words in it, and it's about like killing the devil, and not about your dick or like weird sex stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so we did that, and I had a really fun time, and people liked it, and I was like, oh, man, I'd do that again. And so I've just kind of been singing ever since in choirs, and then went to Cégep at Champlain and got vocal lessons there, and that's really kind of when I was like, oh, there's actually, a technique to this. It's not just like rock and roll. Your voice is what it is. You can practice that and try to get better. And then choir's been super helpful, and playing in bands and stuff. So yeah.
Did you ever feel like you had a really bad singing voice? Like, was that something you had to discover, like that you could sound good singing? Because I think a lot of people go through that, especially a lot of boys. This is on my mind because I recently did an interview where we talked about this.
Okay.
The whole concept of people like discovering that they can sing, because a lot of people, it's hard. It's hard to be vulnerable and to expose your singing voice.
I think that's a really hard question to answer, because there's probably, there was it just seemed like with that moment that I was talking about at the Christian camp thing, it was just kind of like, oh wow, I like this and other people like it too, where it was just like, or other people appeared to like it anyway, and it was just like I was unaware of that before, so I don't think I was thinking about it really. And then I like to think I know my limitations in my voice. I think
that's important. Like your range.
Yeah, range, and like the things that I'm comfortable doing. Like I don't sign up to sing like high A's and a bunch like all the time. There's some people that can live up there.
Yeah.
And I used to play in a couple bands with guys who can just live up in the high area, but I'm good for like, a couple belters, and then I want to be in the comfort zone, or else I'm going to lose my voice,
Yeah. For me, like an F is a high note. So
yeah.
But again, you have to be aware of what your range is and what parts of your range sound good. Most tenors, or most people who sing tenor in choirs, aren't real tenors.
Right.
First of all, some choirs will get women who are altos to sing tenor.
Yes.
And they're probably the best tenors.
Yeah, they're great
in a lot of choirs.
They got power. They got,
Yeah, somebody who can, a lower alto woman is often going to sing those tenor lines really well. And then most people who sing tenor are people like me. They're really baritones. Maybe sort of higher baritones. I'm not like I can't sing really low either. My range is quite small. So to sing tenor parts, I have to use my head voice a lot.
Right.
And that's fine. I can do it. I can slip into the falsetto, but it's not as powerful as those people who can
really hit it.
Really belt and hit those notes. I envy those people. But
it
is what it is. All right, so let's listen to a song. We're going to listen to a tune from Gatekeepers, which is your band. This tune is called Shelter, and let's give her a go.
rest of us are leaving. Common sense is thrown by the wayside, and it seems as though there's always a place to go where the worst of our ideas may hide. In a mind's time flown by, you're only known by what you done yesterday, and then other stories spun, and what's done is done, and you abide by the fortune teller's say there's no shelter from the eye. That's where the trouble lies. Sweltering times, you give out a reason and only give back rhymes. Week by week, trials are unique, tribulations speak for themselves. You find it hard to sleep as the night makes you weak, but the prospect of tomorrow makes your heart leap. There's no shelter from the eye. That's where the trouble lies. In this sweltering times, you give out a reason and only give back right. Never knew, never fell, never slipped back, never flew. In the days when everyone is leering and recompense is hard to find, well, it goes to show all that smoke you blow can't be measured as a monument of time. There's no shelter from the eyes. That's where the trouble lies. In this sweltering times, you give out a reason and only give back rhymes. There's no shelter from the eyes. That's where the trouble lies. In the sweltering times, you give out a reason and only give back.
I dig that harmonic at the end, that your guitar player did there.
Yeah, he's full of that stuff.
Yeah, it's always a nice way to end a tune, a little guitar harmonic. It's got that nice bell sound. I really like the guitar and the bass. I like the interplay between them, and I like the melody and harmony. It sort of sounds like I'm saying I like everything. It's a good tune. So who wrote that one?
So I mean, at the finished product, it's always like a combination of us. But that one really, I think, was mostly mine, which I had arrived in London, and then with the idea of it, and then after meeting Nick, really kind of worked on it and put the bridge in. I think the bridge didn't exist before. I just had like the chorus and the verses and stuff.
Yeah, the bridge gives it a nice lift.
Yeah.
Which I think is what a bridge is supposed to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Nick, I mean, he's just so great at. So the way that it normally works, I mean, the way that it's worked with, like, I would say 75% of the songs that I brought forward is I come up with some kind of rudimentary thing on guitar so I can just figure out what the melody and the lyrics are going to be, like what the song's going to be about. And sometimes it'll be like I only have one verse or, half a chorus or something, but I'll like kind of the vibe of the tune. And if I bring that to Nick, then Nick is, as you can hear, very talented at playing guitar, and he's got quite interesting kind of ideas about accompaniment, because he spent such a long time kind of like accompanying different singers around London for a while after university, as far as I can tell. I know he's told me some stories about that, but he's so creative in the way that he can play bass and chord stuff and do all this wacky crap all at the same time. He's unreal to watch him play. Sometimes I have
experienced.
Yeah,
he's an experienced sideman.
Indeed, he is. Yeah, and before this band, he told me that he had never done really much singing at all, and he's got a great voice.
So that's him singing backing vocals,
backup
vocals,
vocals,
right?
Yeah,
he sounds great. Sounds fantastic.
And he's a guy who can spend time up there, as I was saying before. He's just up there all the time. It's all good.
Is there a singer you think that your voice kind of, like a famous singer that your voice kind of reflects or is somewhat similar to in terms of range? Or
people have said Bublé before to me, which is it's not a bad thing. Certainly not a bad thing. Like he's got an amazing voice. The stuff he does is not, necessarily for me all the time. But yeah, I would say like in kind of the smoothness factor, I guess him. I don't know. I have a hard time kind of attributing myself to stuff like that.
Yeah, I can also hear maybe James Taylor a little bit, just in terms of the kind of range.
Yep.
That kind of baritone-ish, tenor-ish, mid-range kind of singing.
Yeah. Well, he's a huge guy of mine, for sure.
Big influence.
Yeah.
Did you write the lyrics for that tune?
Yes.
So what's going on in the song lyrically?
So I started really to write the lyrics, and it was written in 2016. So as you might remember, that was a really weird year for people dying that are famous.
That's true.
Prince, Bowie, Leonard Cohen. I know there's some other ones, but those.
Lemmy from Motorhead, although that may have been late 2015. Yeah, it was awful.
Oh yeah, that was bad.
It was a terrible year.
Yeah, certainly for that kind of stuff, it was awful. And so that kind of got me thinking about, that gave me the first line in the days when the best of us are leaving. And then from there, I kind of wanted to start each line with like a different kind of like a growing sense of time. So the next one starts week by week, or the middle one is, in a month's time or whatever. So each has a little reference to like, a unit of time. So I tend to do stuff like that. I like to force kind of ideas like that. And sometimes they really don't work out, but when they don't work out, I don't finish the song usually.
Move on to a new one.
Yeah, I'm always trying to work on it like 6 tunes at a time, or else I just go nuts, so I can just kind of pivot in between. I was like, okay, well, this one's pissing me off now, so I'm going to start working on this one.
Do you do a lot of like multiple drafts when you're writing songs? Like, do you always have songs in different levels or different degrees of completion?
Yeah.
Like this one's half done. This one's almost done. This one is just an idea.
Yeah. I would never say I would know it down to like, is this song half done or? Yeah. But I definitely know when it's time to like get on the train and finish the song, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
So like you'll get this last part, and you'll be like, okay, that's good. Now I'm really jazzed up about how this song is going, and so I'm just going to keep hacking at it until it's done. But sometimes I'll be like, okay, I love this little thing, but I can't figure out what to put next after it. Whether it be like a chord progression or like a lyrical idea or anything. Sometimes I'll just be stuck at that for, weeks and months at a time. But that's where, working on the other song. So you're kind of like always, leveling up each
Sure.
song as you go on.
Do you have kind of a preferred approach when it comes to writing lyrics? Like I haven't really been doing songwriting for years, but when I used to write songs and I would write lyrics, the lyrics would always be the last thing. And it was always the most dreaded part of writing a song.
Okay. Interesting.
But this is something I like talking about with people. I like, because everybody's kind of got a different approach. There are so many ways to write lyrics. There are so many things that lyrics can communicate in a song. Do you have kind of like a favorite approach?
So I mean, usually, I love rhyming schemes. I love, as I said before, I love to kind of impose things on verses, but I also like, and Jackson Browne, I think, is a guy. Do you listen to much Jackson Browne?
I know like some of his most popular songs. That's kind of a hole in my musical knowledge.
Oh
though.
man, take a trip down there sometime.
I will.
It's. I mean, he's like the newest guy I discovered of all those older dudes, if that makes any sense. Like I just hadn't like Paul Simon, James Taylor, Wings and McCartney, Clapton, all these guys. I've been down their roads and listened to their albums, but he was a guy that just
Warren
didn't
Zevon?
come. Zevon. Oh man, amazing.
Because I know they played together. Like, I think Jackson Browne appears on the album "Excitable Boy," which is a favorite of mine. Love that album.
Incredible. Was he singing or is he playing or?
I think he sings. He might play as well. And I'm pretty sure Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac plays some guitar on that album too.
Unreal.
That guy. Guy could play.
What's that called?
"Excitable Boy."
Oh, okay. I'll have to check that out.
It's the one with Werewolves of London on it.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'll have to check that out. But I mean, yeah, so Jackson Browne, the way that he writes lyrics and the way that he'll, use a turn of phrase to like spur the rest of the verse. I don't know if that's coming out like in a incoherent way, but I can tell that was like the thing that inspired him to write the rest of the verse around it.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, like he's got a seed idea and he kind of grows, everything else kind of grows out from that.
Sure. And he's just like, he's amazing at just like finding, the most like beautiful little, just tiny little ways to rhyme words and stuff. And I really, I dig that about him so much. And I try to use that, as much as possible.
All right, we're going to listen to another Gatekeepers tune. This one is called "I Must Insist."
Cool.
You may notice, the listener might not, that I have chosen the first and last song from your record. Both kind of ballads. Let's give it a listen.
Tonight, I swear I'll write the song to end my sorrow. If you might beg for the light, 'cause it's wrong to steal from tomorrow. Wishes are made by the many. Are lived by the few. It's a long, long haul to the prize of penny, though I must insist that you do. She came to me shrouded in reason, said don't make light of the game, embrace the new. Inspired to change with the strength of the season, with the words I must insist that you do. Wishes are made by the many. Dreams are lived by the few. within a warm myopic space. The trust is there and the justice is fair, never seems to arrive too late. But it'd be a tragedy for what's ours to see it remain hidden all our lives. But I must insist that you grant the wish made many thousand times. Though I must insist that you do. Wishes are made by the many, dreams are lived by the few. It's a long, long haul to the price of penny. Though I must insist that you do.
So I have to confess, I chose that song purely for that ending. I love the guitar there at the end. That's so tasty.
Yeah. He, you can't stop him from playing stuff like that. And not that I would, but it's just like sometimes we're having band practice and he's just off doing that crazy stuff. So his I would say his major influence, besides like Stevie Wonder on like kind of his chord, he loves to play like a piano player. That's his thing that he's
I've
always
noticed.
saying. But Tommy Emmanuel is like his guy. Like, so do you know him very much?
No.
He's like a virtuoso kind of solo guitar player. He doesn't do any singing. He comes out, he does like, a standard like Blue Moon, and he'll do it and be like, oh, I'd like to introduce the band, and then just start playing the bass and then gradually add voices in. And so he's kind of playing like three things at the same time. And so, check him out. He's like unreal. And Nick, obviously draws a lot of inspiration from him. And so he's just pretty much always doing something of that sort. And it's like,
I love that ending.
Yeah.
It's great. That tune's very jazzy, I noticed, in the chord progression. So did you write that one?
I did write that one. I actually, okay. So again, this was one where it was finished by the two of us, but I would say the verses and the chorus, I had written kind of sort of on guitar back when I was like living in Calgary before I moved to London. And so that's kind of an older tune that he then made sweet with all this guitar stuff that he does.
And those jazzier changes, was that something that got added in?
So like I would say like my friends like to make fun of my guitar playing and call the kind of chords that I play Crooks voicings. And so what a Crooks voicing basically is you take the top four strings and you figure out some sort of sweet chord, and then the top two strings of the guitar are just free. And so it's like gotta get like a little bit of an open string, and then you just move that shape around and it gets you weird stuff. Classic bass player playing guitar type stuff. And I'm really trying to get myself out of that, habit. But yeah,
always having the open B and E string,
pretty much.
just ringing away.
I don't know what these strings do, What are they for? I only had four. I don't know why I did that accent, but
I liked it. Keep it up. Well, I dig it, and that ending was super cool. But the song is very nice. So,
thank you.
Is the song about anything in particular?
So it's kind of like, it's kind of about like procrastination, I guess, is the
Okay.
most central theme. So the first line is tonight, I swear I'll write the song to save my sorrow, kind of thing. And it's just, yeah. And then, it's just about kind of when's the right time to do something, and am I holding myself back, or, should I just kind of get on this thing? And is anything going to happen if I do anything anyway? Just kind of a...
Is procrastination a problem that you have?
I think it's probably a problem that most people have.
I would agree.
What with the plentiful entertainment we've got, So I don't know. It's certainly been a problem for me before. I think I've got a pretty good. I know how to make myself work now. And it took a little while of getting used to, having a day job, and also then coming home and doing music stuff. Like then your day is almost like a 16-hour day every day of the week, So it did take me, like, I kind of eased into London that way in a musician. I gave myself a break, and I was just like, just do whatever you want. And then that kind of song came out of it, and then that's kind of spurred me to try to get things going again. But I had to move here and like figure out a job and figure out a place to stay, and not just get kicked out for having no money. So there's a certain amount of life administration that I need to do whilst
for sure
continuing. It's not like I moved over here and now I'm a professional musician. I'm still actively working on that.
Right. Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not a easy moment to be working on that.
Certainly not.
What with the gigs?
What with the gigs?
Non-existent.
Not being there. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about London just a little bit.
Okay.
COVID aside, how do you find the London music scene, and how do you think it compares with what you've known in the past in Canada?
Yeah, so I think my perception of what it's like in Canada will be kind of a bit weird, because I moved to Montreal with my old prog rock band that I was playing with when I was like 20, called the Lennox Villains, because like super original with names, why not? And so like I knew nothing when I was there about anything, really. I was just kind of like a 20-year-old kid playing shows, but not really. Like, we played a lot of really wicked shows, and for sure, but we never really got around to recording, and it was always kind of like battling other life stuff happening constantly. So we were always playing and everything, but nothing much was happening. We were just kind of playing in Montreal now, whereas we used to play in like Sherbrooke and Lennoxville and stuff. But so then after that, I moved back because I was like, well, I don't think I know enough about music, and I don't think I'm smart enough to teach myself about it like some people are. And so why don't I go to university and try to do it that way? And that was great, but I kind of like, I think I was stuck. Well, not stuck. I think I just lived in kind of a entrepreneurial type of spirit for a while. It was all just learning about how to play bass, because I picked up the double bass at university, actually, because of my teacher.
And in fairness, before you can become a professional musician, you do have to be a musician.
Yeah.
Right. Like you do have to, whether it's you learn 3 chords and play in a punk band, or you learn all the chords and you play in a jazz quintet or whatever. You got to learn, you need to get some kind of chops, some kind of musicality going.
Yeah. So I think like I thought I had more of that when I was 20 than I actually did. I didn't know anything about how music was like actually like how to control like your talent, I guess. It was just kind of like, and it's not that I didn't think that the tunes that we were playing were good. I certainly thought they were good, but I don't think I knew. Like, I was in a completely different situation than I am now, whereas I feel like I can, what's the word I'm looking for? Just like kind of
like
control.
you have better control over it?
Better control, instead of it just being like, okay, let's jam until we find something that we all like, you know? I can write it down and I can go, oh, this is why this is sweet. Or, you know, think about it in music theory terms, I guess. Had none of that before. Didn't even know how to read anything off of staff or anything.
So there's different like schools of thought about reading and knowing music theory. Some people find it useful, and obviously like people learn it for a reason, like because they think that it's going to bring some benefit. And then some people have kind of, you know, arguably like a hipster mentality, or like a, you know, I don't want to inject too much bias here, but some people think, you know, okay, if you learn theory, your music is going to be really like cold and technical, and you know, it will lack the authenticity of, you know, the guy who just sits down and jams and just purely plays by ear. Do you think there's truth to that? Do you think learning music theory is beneficial for somebody who wants to make music that isn't, let's say, classical music?
I mean, for me, what it did was it alleviated all the frustration of not knowing stuff. And so now, like, when I hear something, I can go to the piano and go, okay, what was that? That was really cool. And how did that work? And then kind of figure it out for myself like that. But before, it was just like, well, I'm not, you know, how could I possibly figure that out? It's just like, just this wacky chord that I'll never know. You know, that was like a weird attitude I had when I was younger, you know.
Oh, that chord, the G flat 13.
Ugh.
I can never play
Expensive.
that. That's
Too
beyond
expensive.
my. Yeah. Well, you pay by the note, right?
That's right.
So, do you think learning theory for you? Do you think it has kind of enabled your creativity more so than kind of destroying your creativity? Or
Yeah, for me, for sure. Just know it, like, and I figured, like, I found out during university that I actually really like knowing this stuff. Even if it's, you know, a little chorale that I have to write for somebody or for the professor or anything, I enjoyed those little puzzles. And so I found that, you know, it makes music a lot less scary if you know, like, kind of a little bit about how it works. Whereas
kind of demystifies it.
Demystifies it, yeah, for sure. And just be like, you know, it doesn't take away from anybody's amazing playing and being able to create kind of like almost, you know, magical universes to live in and everything. It doesn't ruin that for me at all. It just lets me go, okay, if I take a closer look at that, I can figure out what that is, and that'll make me happy to know that at the very least, you know, and I'll learn something new.
When you're writing music, do you ever like to impose rules on yourself? You mentioned like the kind of music theory chorales. And when you're learning music theory, you're usually learning like Western classical theory, unless you're learning jazz theory, which is another set of rules. But either way, there's kind of like, you know, with chorales, it's like, you know, no parallel fifths and blah, 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 blah. Do you ever kind of like to say, you know, create some rules and impose them on yourself to sort of guide that creativity? Or is it more just like a way of just understanding what's going on behind the scenes? Sort of in the back end while you're writing?
I would say that it depends on, sometimes like if I'm trying to come up with like a bass line or something, I'll impose myself some rules in the sense like, I really want to play this bass line. What chords do we put over top of it to make it always work with the melody that's going on? But if I'm writing on guitar, it's much more of like a standard kind of singer-songwriter approach, I think. So it's kind of, yeah, I've got the two ways that I like to, because sometimes like a song will come from the bass line and sometimes it'll come from the guitar in like a more normal way.
Do you think that results in different sounding music?
I think it definitely can do, because if I come to Nick with a bass line, he's going to do something that I never, like I don't hear. I would never be able to preempt what he's going to do to the bass line. Whereas if I play in something and I have a little idea on guitar, I might know how that might turn out a little bit better, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
But like sometimes I'll be like, what do you think about this bass line? And then almost without fail, he'll play like the most wacky, cool thing, like on the first try. You know, he's one of these guys that just like, he just clicks with it, you know. He's special like that.
Must have a good ear.
Yeah, no, he's unreal.
London's a pretty big city. It's a diverse city.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that translates in the musical scene? Like, is it pretty diverse? Are there lots of styles that are represented in terms of the local scene?
You can get whatever you want to get over here. That's for sure. And that comes in kind of like all levels of proficiency and, I mean, so it's interesting because obviously, you know, our band is a little bit weird. It's like a proggy kind of acoustic, melodious, jazzy, folky, kind of whatever, almost trying to be like rock instruments as a duo, like rock music sounding as a duo, but jazzy influence and stuff. Like we like to make the songs big with in the sense that the harmonies, like for instance, the end of both those tunes that we played before just have huge like belter harmony things at the end. So that's like kind of an important thing. We love to make, we think the words and the music should be the most important type thing, but we also like to screw around and have like wacky stuff underneath that fulfills our kind of proggy desires, if I can put it that way. So we're
gotta
a weird
scratch
band.
those itches.
We're a weird band. I'm not afraid to say it. I love our weirdness. But you know, it's not the kind of band that you can just go anywhere and get a gig with. Like those people are skeptical of the duo thing, depending on where you go. And so it took us a little while to get into what I would call like a circle of people who are actively kind of making gigs that jive with our kind of vibe that we've got going, and other bands that are doing sort of the same kind of acoustic-y, kind of progressive jazziness, whatever. So that took like a really long time. And in terms of, you know, like the last 4 years or so, but we played a lot of bad gigs, like really bad, not very fun, like in between.
Bad in what way?
Like just like the bill that we were on. Okay, first of all, it's like a pub and you play in the basement and nobody's there, and you're in between a punk band and like an old guy blues band, and like people are just putting on shows just kind of like willy-nilly. For what reason, I can't really tell. Like nobody makes money off those events. Certainly you don't get paid as the band. It's actually quite hard to get paid as a band starting out in London. So it's not good that way. But now we're in with a few different people, one of which is Tony Moore, who was the guitar player in Iron Maiden for a bit.
Wow.
And was in Cutting Crew, who did that song "I Just Died in Your Arms Tonight." So he was the piano player and writer of that tune. And so he runs a venue in Balham, which is kind of like South London, called the Bedford, which is a place that Ed Sheeran and a number of other people used to play before they were kind of big. And we met him there, and he's invited us on his radio show. He invited us to that Marylebone Street Festival thing. We've met a few other people who got us into that kind of the Pheasantry gig, which was that jazz club in Earl's Court. So, like, unfortunately, things were really going, you know, in the right direction, I thought. Like, I could control it in the sense that my job was going well, and I had all the time to do gigs at night, and the gigs at night were going well. And then COVID hit, and it's just like, ugh. So there's going to be, you know, a certain amount of restarting that needs to be done with those people that I was mentioning, reaching out to them because they're all hurting as well and trying their best to keep going. And a lot of them have pivoted really well and started doing online stuff where all the proceeds go to artists and stuff. So I really commend kind of their efforts during this thing to keep musicians going.
So do you think the London music scene is in a good position to bounce back when the time is ready, when the pandemic is finally kind of alleviated?
It will really depend on how well the venues are supported, because that's the real thing that I think makes this city special, is there's so many just incredible places to play. Yeah. You just got to get in there. But they're all like amazing, and everybody you know has played at them. That the Pheasantry place, I think Clapton used to live upstairs or something from it. So like he was playing there, whatever he wanted all the time.
Wow.
And there's just so many stories of places like that. There's a lot of bad places to play too, but I think I've figured out how to avoid those places. But yeah, so it'll depend. I really hope so. Certainly the musicians will be there ready to go. But yeah.
And what about the listeners?
Oh, well, that's not for me to say. I don't think it'll depend. It's just kind of really annoying that it depends on how we react to this invisible virus thing, because we can't just keep opening up and closing down and opening up. That's hurting the economy over here more than anything else. And so now what the threat is like local lockdown type things, which don't really seem to make any sense. And any time that they've happened, they seem to have happened way too late. So there's a big outbreak again. So it's just like nobody knows anything about how we still don't know. I think it'll be next year before I play a gig anyway, unless it's outside. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's unfortunately probably the case. And I agree with you from what I'm seeing. The UK, unfortunately, it's probably not the country that's done the worst, but it's certainly not one of the ones that's done the best in terms of handling this thing.
It's there's not the same kind of outright ridiculousness like Brazil and the United States, but like they're more like covert shittiness. And so like people were asking on the BBC to the Prime Minister, they're like, don't you think, maybe there's some lessons to be learned from how we dealt with it at the beginning? And his answer is always, we only care about what's happening now. Just like what's happening now. We're trying to take care of what's happening now. It's like, yeah, man,
crazy because he almost died.
Yeah, I know. And he, I don't know. He's got a special talent of winning people over and then losing their trust and then winning it back over again.
Yeah,
he's incredible at that. And I've even I didn't vote for him. I was allowed to vote in the last little election that went on in December.
You voted?
I did, yeah.
Cool.
You're allowed to vote if you're a resident here, which is
nice.
guess not a rule in Canada. Certainly not a rule in the States.
No.
You have to be a citizen, I think.
But you didn't vote for him for Bojo.
For Bojo, no, I didn't. No, I voted for Corbyn, who got smoked.
Oh my God!
But it was unbelievable. I really didn't think he was going to get smoked that bad. I thought he might lose, but man, when the provisional numbers came in and it was just like predicting a landslide, I was just like, oh wow, okay.
That happened.
Yeah. Anyway, I didn't vote for him. I think he's kind of a knob. I think he's a bit slimy.
For sure.
But he's really good at kind of making you feel bad for him or something. I think that the haircut is really good at that.
Yeah, I think so.
And I don't know, he's done this thing where he's almost like he's funny.
Yeah, he is.
But he's funny and it's almost endearing. I think endearing is almost the right word. I think if there was I don't know. He's a special guy. Like, he's clearly built to be a politician.
Yeah.
I don't think he's done a great job, and I think he should be held to account for that. But yeah, it's not for me alone to decide, you know.
He's not as viscerally unlikable as Trump or Bolsonaro in Brazil.
This is the thing. Anybody looks better than those two dicks over there, but
yeah, they really do.
He's not as outright just like totally an asshole like those guys are, of like spreading misinformation and such.
Yeah.
He does it in a covert kind of, oh, look at me, I'm stupid, I accidentally did this, you know.
Yeah, he's very good at like kind of playing to the camera, and I think you're right. He does kind of make you feel sorry for him.
But he also kind of strikes me as he wants to be like Winston Churchill, which is like like he's not being successful in my mind, but it's like he wants to be him so bad. So when he gives his talks, you know, we must do this and we must do that, and you know, it's like, man, how can anybody take you seriously with that frickin' haircut? Like,
yeah, I know,
it's unreal. So I can't help but think it's all part of, you know, some kind of big conspiracy. The haircut is just not. I can't get past it. You know,
the haircut is, there's something going on there. It's
signaling
something.
Something going on there, indeed.
Sam, thank you so much for joining me. This was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you,
buddy.
Great
catching up with you, and awesome listening to your tunes. And really cool hearing about what's going on in London, even if not everything is wonderful. At least the tunes go on, I guess.
The tunes go on, yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I love it, buddy. It's super inspirational that you're doing this stuff. So,
well, I'm having a lot of fun doing it. So
I bet.
Thank you so much. And that's our show, folks. A big thank you to Sam Crooks for appearing on the show and playing some tunes for us. A big thank you to you, the listener, for tuning in. This week's episode was recorded and edited by me, Joe Diaco, with music by Alex McNeil.